Haribo. Namaste. Jai Shri Krishna. Shri Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. So tonight, I'm speaking on Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, text 8 to 9, which are very interesting verses. So more about that after a little bit of Kirtan.
Prabhu Nityananda Goranga
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivadigasatara Satta Shishima Jagakuru Sudaswarupananda Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivadigasatara Satta Shishima His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Go Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Nitai Goswal Mission Ki Jai. Navadvita Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Mathuradam Ki Jai. Mayapodam Ki Jai. Gangamaya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Shrimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Omagina Timarandasya Gana Gana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militanyena Tajmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Statpitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantekam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Suta Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakapa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavenbhyo Vaishnavbhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. For speaking, first to offer my humble obeisances, the lotus feet of my spiritual master, Jagatguru Sudaswarupananda Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada is the mercy manifestation of Lord Chaitanya, and is very dear to Radha and Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are like wish-fulfilling trees, able to fulfill all the desires of the fallen living entities, and are full of compassion upon them. Haribol, Namaste, Krishna. Thanks for watching, either now, live, or later. I thank you for watching, because you give me the opportunity to be able to speak on Bhagavad Gita, to prepare for these classes, studying the wonderful conversation between Vasambhara, between Krishna and his intimate friend Arjuna. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 1870, that this ajasyati chaya imam damyam samvadam avayaho jnana yagnena Tainaham ishtasha miti me matihi. The one who studies this sacred conversation, this Dhamyam Samvada, a sacred conversation or a conversation about Dhamma, the one who studies this worships me by his intelligence. So, taking the time to study Bhagavad Gita, to discuss Bhagavad Gita, this is pleasing to Krishna. This is worshipping him by our intelligence. We have this God-given intelligence, this, we are pure spirit soul covered by a subtle material body and a gross physical body. So part of this subtle material body is our mind and our intelligence, our buddhi. So by utilizing our intelligence to study Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it's purifies the subtle body, purifies our consciousness. As a result, it brings us closer to our pure relationship with Lord Krishna. We are pure spirit soul, but we are covered by ignorance and covered with this subtle material body and gross material body. And through our false identification with it, we're here in this material universe, pursuing sense gratification or enjoyment separate from the Supreme Lord. And this, has a rather bad outcome. So actually what I'm speaking of here is not some sort of general introduction to Bhagavad Gita, but rather this is very much about what tonight's verses are about. And so we'll continue on. So we've been, we're currently studying Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, entitled Karma Yoga, Action, Krishna Consciousness. So these first chapters of Bhagavad Gita, have been analyzed initially by Jamuna Acharya and then further by Ramanuja Acharya, these two great stalwart Vaishnava Acharyas within the Sri Sampradaya. They, and further emphasized by Sridhara Swami and then other Vaishnava commentators. These first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita are considered to be about karma yoga. Karma is action. So it's very much these first 6 chapters are about, undertaking action with the goal of attaining self-realization and liberation, mukti, liberation from this material world through one's own actions. Karma yoga. Yoga meaning linking up, attaining union with the Supreme. Karma through action. Whereas the second 6 chapters, chapters 7 through 12, there's a decided change, a significant change in the subject matter, where it becomes focused upon bhakti yoga, developing love for Krishna, love for the Supreme Person. So this is, whereas Karma Yoga is about what we do with our body. Right? How do we engage our body in service of the Supreme Lord, or is our goal in life serving our senses? It's one or the other, right? Senses include subtle senses, including the subtle body. So, is our goal of our actions to engage in service to the Supreme Lord, or is our goal to, serve ourselves and serve our own material desires? Whereas bhakti yoga It's not about what we're doing with our gross physical body. This, of course, it's included within it. But Bhakti Yoga is about love. Developing love for the Supreme Lord. So the second 6 chapters are very much about understanding who Krishna is, about engaging in practices that are helpful for developing one's loving relationship with Krishna. And Krishna speaking about, his reciprocal relationship with his devotees. So devotee, we use this term devotee, we throw it around, oh, I'm a devotee, he's a devotee, she's a devotee, but like this devotee, so we tend to then lose sight of what this means, right? A devotee means someone who's devoted, in love, in a loving relationship with Krishna. Whereas someone who's engaged in karma yoga, they, if it's not, if they're not within bhakti yoga, karma yoga is included, right? Because somebody who's loving Krishna automatically engages in actions to please Krishna. So with their subtle and gross physical bodies, they're engaging in actions to be pleasing to Krishna. So this is a part of bhakti. And also, of course, they have knowledge, right? Their actions and their love for Krishna is based on jnana, or transcendental knowledge of who they are and who Krishna is, what my relationship with Krishna is, what sambandha, my relationship, abhideya, an understanding of what the process is to attain the goal of life, and prayojana, the goal of life. The goal of life is to attain pure love for Krishna, prema bhakti. And we attain it through the process of sadhana bhakti, devotional service and practice. Through Vaidhi bhakti, following the rules and regulations, or through raganuga bhakti, the development of spontaneous love for Krishna. And so, of course, somebody who has bhakti or love for Krishna, they're engaging in activities to please their beloved, to please Krishna. So anyway, so in this first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, we're studying about action. What do we do with our body? Right? This is Arjuna's question, right at the start of Bhagavad Gita. What do I do with this body? Am I going to fight? Am I going to engage in this particular kind of action or karma? And he's worried that if he engages in this activity, he's going to suffer adverse consequences. In other words, he's going to reap bad karma. He's going to go, he even says to Krishna, hey, heck, Krishna, I've heard that people who, destroy family tradition, which is known as Kula Dhamma, right? The dynastic, Arjuna is coming in a dynasty, establish, a prominent family, a Kula. So there's Kula Dhamma, my duties in relation to my family. And when there's strong families, then this is good for society. Right? A lot of the problems in Western society today, or any society, they're due to the breakdown in the family. High rates of divorce, high rates of children born outside of wedlock. So these are 2 very significant issues. And also families, all living separately. Instead of there being multi-generations, grandparents, parents, and children, and grandchildren, all living together and with their own space or whatever, but nonetheless living together, so they're all functioning as an extended family unit. There's virtually a complete breakdown in the West. Although I have to say, because here I live in Hawaii, the cost of living is so high. Up and down this my street, my two neighbor across the road and neighbor to the left and neighbor to the right, they've got the kids at home because the kids can't afford to move out. In fact, they end up building them separate houses. Like my neighbor next door is building like what they call an accessory dwelling unit to stick the kids in there. The kids, I'm talking about kids, they're like in their 30s and 40s, you know. It's like my kids, I keep calling my kids, but heck, you know, the oldest one's over 40. He's 40, turning 44 this year, you know, so they're not kids anymore anyway. Sorry, getting into a bit of a rave here. But, you know, so the breakdown in the family is bad for society. And of course, so Arjuna was worried about this. He tells Krishna, hey, I've heard through disciplic succession that one who destroys family traditions dwell always in hell. You know, so he's worried, I'm going to engage in bad action here. Bad karma, I'm going to reap what's known as papam, sinful reaction, by engaging in this fighting. So anyway, you know, then he basically asks Krishna, well, what should I do? I'm confused about my dharma. I'm confused about my duty. What should I do? What is most beneficial? And so this conversation takes place throughout the first 6 on this topic, kind of takes place throughout these first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. And it's not until the end of the 6th chapter or at the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna makes really clear that the best yogi, right, because he's talking about karma yoga and jnana yoga, knowledge yoga, he talks about sankhya, he talks about you know, transcendental knowledge, he talks about dhyana yoga, attaining samadhi, Brahma Nivarnam, you know, liberation in the Supreme. Talks about all these different topics, which involves different kinds of yoga processes. But at the end of chapter 6, Krishna says, and the best yogi is he who is involved in his bhakti, loving devotion. And then Krishna you know, takes off from that point in the chapters 7 to 12. But anyway, so in this chapter 5, so Arjuna, it's titled Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness. And so we've been, you know, there's 6 different sequences of verses here according to this, you know, analysis that I've had, that I've, you know, taken from others. And the first 6 verses were about, well, what's best? Karma yoga, or is it sannyas yoga, renunciation? So is it better to work, or is it better to renounce work and not work? You know, because like, heck, Krishna, if I work, my kind of work, my duty, I'm a soldier, I'm a kshatriya, my duty is to protect, I'm going to end up killing a whole bunch of people. And as I was just saying, this is, you know, this can be bad. Arjuna's worried I'm going to suffer a sinful reaction. And not only am I personally going to suffer, which is kind of a bit of a self-centered look on things, but it's going to be bad for society, it's going to be bad for, there's going to be tons of widows, there's going to be lots of children born out of wedlock as a result, because there's going to be not that many men and lots of women, and just the way things are, there's going to lead to illicit sexual relationships, there's going to be children born out of wedlock without fathers who aren't going to take care of them. And, you know, there's going to be all kinds of societal problems as a result. And this is not good. Okay, so then Arjuna is thinking, well, look, heck, you know, I shouldn't fight. I'd rather not fight at all. Okay, I won't engage in action. I'll renounce. I'll become a renunciate. You know, so Krishna establishes in the first 6 verses of chapter 5, for more or less the second or third time that Krishna's done this, and Krishna again does it in chapter 18 when he begins his essentially summarizing the Bhagavad Gita, and then establishing once again very clearly that no, he's not recommending sannyas. I mean, that, you know, for some people it's appropriate. As Krishna says in chapter 5, for some for some people it's appropriate, but they're both different stages of the same thing. In other words, the yoga, forming a relationship with the Supreme, linking up with the Supreme. And so in this, and of the two, Krishna says the best is karma yoga, because it's easier and safer. For someone like Arjuna, what are you going to do, You're going to go and sit down and meditate? I mean, good luck with that, man. I got a confession here, I do my japa, right? And I try to concentrate on the sound of Krishna's names or on the Krishna's pastimes, and have various visual aids to help remember Krishna's pastimes. But the reality is my mind tends to wander, go all over the place. It's just very difficult to control one's mind. In fact, Arjuna says in chapter 6, when Krishna outlines an even more difficult yoga process, through the grace of our spiritual master and Krishna, we're receiving the easiest yoga process, bhakti yoga. It's so easy. If you have a boy and a girl and they spontaneously attract each other, and they develop love for each other, and then they enter into a loving relationship and get married, and so on, and have a very happy marriage. Now, unfortunately, lots of marriages aren't that happy. But anyway, let's just imagine here in our ideal scenario here, you have a man and a woman, and they're in love, and the wife's always thinking about the husband. If he goes away somewhere, she's always thinking about him, and he's always thinking about her, and he's working hard to please her and to serve his family, they have children, and anyway, whatever, the ideal loving relationship, right? So naturally, they're always thinking of each other. It's not like you have to say to the wife, well, you have to think of your husband, you need to develop a loving relationship with him, or you need to say to the husband, look, you have to love your wife. Now, unfortunately, sometimes you end up in counseling situations where you're trying to counsel people who are not having a good marriage, and you have to try and give them pointers. Well, these kind of things can help you develop a better relationship. So this is a little bit like sadhana bhakti, right? You have to have these are the kind of things you should do that will help you develop love for Krishna. You should spend time on focused chanting of Krishna's names, doing japa without distraction. This will be beneficial. Oh, and you should read Krishna book. You should read about Krishna's pastimes. And you should have pictures of Krishna in your home. Right? So these are kind of like pointers to help us develop love for Krishna. But the goal is just like in this loving couple I'm talking about, you don't need to tell them what they need to do to develop love for each other, because they already have it. They have love for each other. It's there spontaneously, automatically. Now, of course, in the material world, like this spontaneous, automatic love, it's quite often just lasts, and after some time it fades, and then it ends, and then you got some big mess on your hand. But when we develop love for Krishna, if we actually attain pure, spontaneous love for Krishna, then there's no question of this ending. Krishna is all attractive. Krishna is the most attractive person. I was emailing with someone, she was asking me questions about what's known as samskaras, or impressions on the mind. Right? She's this particular person's, yoga teacher, right? And there's lots of aspects of yoga that are used for, helping people with their mental problems. So in fact the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, very much about samskaras and yamas and niyamas and practical processes to sort of understand and control how the mind works and how to try and control it. So anyway, this person's asked me questions about this, and so I'm responding, well, look, there's nothing wrong with different kind of yoga practices. She was asking about yoga nidra, right? And that she's reading something that's saying yoga nidra can be helpful for people to deal with different mental hang-ups, right? Like we have our subtle mental body, and it has its different problems in there or whatever. And this process of yoga nidra that she was studying and asking me about, can be beneficial. So this is great. Okay, anything that's helpful for people, this is great, right? But the most valuable thing we can give people is knowledge, transcendental knowledge, about their true relationship with the Supreme Lord. In other words, who they are and who God is and what the purpose of life is. This is the most important thing that we can give someone. Giving them the names of Krishna. This is the most important thing. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very, direct. And he would essentially just say nothing else is of any value. The only thing of value is Lord Chaitanya's message. This is the actual solution to people's problems. Everything else is just a temporary material thing. You need to give them real solutions. And of course, when Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada first met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they're having this discussion. Bhaktisiddhanta is telling him, oh, you're an educated young man, you should spread Lord Chaitanya's message in the West. Bhaktivedanta Swami says, well, wait a minute, India is not independent. We're oppressed by the British. There's this major problem. We need to solve this problem first. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur tells him, no, that's not, that's empires come and go. Oppression comes and goes. This is not important. What's important is giving people Lord Chaitanya's message so that they understand their true identity and develop their relationship with God, with Krishna. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada comments, after this he was completely defeated and appreciated Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's message, and he left feeling that, Lord Chaitanya's mission is in good hands. So anyway, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but tonight's so after Krishna establishes that karma yoga is better than renunciation, right? Just becoming a renunciate, and I guess I was talking about in chapter 6. Krishna goes on to even describe the pranayama process, or the Astanga yoga, the eight limbs of yoga, which Patanjali discusses in his Yoga Sutras. And he talks about controlling the mind, going and sitting on a deer skin, and sitting cross-legged, and focusing on the tip of the nose, and having the eyes half open and half closed, and controlling the mind, and withdrawing engaging in pranayama, and then withdrawing the senses from their sense objects, controlling the mind. Arjuna is just like, oh man, no way, Krishna, I can't do that. The mind is very difficult to control. So, and then Krishna has to agree. When Arjuna has to ask, well, heck, this process you're describing just sounds so difficult. What happens to someone who doesn't persist in it? They become like a riven cloud, sort of drifting off in no man's land. They're sort of like, they're not into material life, but they're not succeeding in this spiritual process. So what happens to them? Of course, and then Krishna describes them. At some point in the future, we'll get to discuss these very important verses in chapter 6. But anyway, so Krishna describes, so the best process is karma yoga. It's better than jnana yoga and sannyas yoga and sankhya yoga. So anyway, so then in the next 6 verses, Krishna then begins to describe a little more about what karma yoga really is. And so Krishna then says, in these verses, text 8 to 9, a person in the divine consciousness, which he described as yuktaha, engaged in the divine consciousness. Right? So a person in the divine consciousness, so yuktaha is yoga, in union, right? Through attaining union with the Supreme, being steadfast in this process of karma yoga, and linking up with the Supreme Person by engaging in karma yoga. So a person in the divine consciousness is, they realize that they're not the doer. I'll just read Bhaktivedanta Swami's translation. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them. Yes, so this is a very kind of interesting verse, or a couple of verses. It's 2 verses, 8 and 9. And it's a little bit like, Krishna's just described that Karma Yoga is better than Sankhya. Sankhya is usually taken, is taught by Kapila, the son of Devahuti, incarnation of Krishna. And he explains Sankhya at some length. And then there's another Kapila, imitator Kapila, who also developed a Sankhya system, but his Sankhya system is atheistic. So Lord Kapila's system of Sankhya is, of course, non-different from devotional service. But Sankhya is an analysis. It means analysis. So it's analysis of the material energy in the material world, and its aim or conclusion is to understand the distinction between the spirit soul and the material world and the material elements. And then at the higher level is also to understand the existence of the Supreme Lord. And understanding, well, I'm not the Supreme Lord. I'm spiritual in essence, but I'm not the Supreme Lord. So of course this is, actual self-realization and God-realization. But so here in these verses, Krishna, after talking about Karma Yoga, is then, and saying Karma Yoga is better, it then is actually sort of explaining a little bit some Sankhya. And so then in these 2 verses, it's like, so the first words here are, Naiva kinchit karo miti. So na, never, eva, certainly, kinchit, anything. Karomi, do, I do. Right? So this karomi, I make, he's doing, I am doing. Right? So never, I do not do anything. I'm not the doer. Right? So even though I'm doing all these things, so a person engaged in the divine consciousness, he manyeta, he thinks, or he should think, he would consider, he's tattvavit. Yukto manyeta tattvavit. But tattvavit, tattva, means thatness, or one who knows the truth. The knower of truth, a knower of the truth. Right? So we have to appreciate here that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is teaching us the truth. Truth with a capital T, right? Not like a little t. This is not relative truth. Well, it's true for me, but maybe it's not true for you. No, this is absolute truth. It's always true. It's true for everyone. At all times, in all places, from forever, eternally. It's anadi. There's no beginning to it. This is, the term often used is absolute truth. It's absolutely true, always, in all circumstances. Right? And so, a tattvavit is somebody who knows this truth. So a person who's engaged in yoga and is a knower of the truth, he's realizing that even though there's all these things going on, I'm seeing, right? In other words, I'm seeing, I've got these eyes and I'm seeing. And I'm hearing. And I'm touching. And I'm smelling. And I'm eating. And I'm walking. And I'm sleeping. And I'm breathing. And I'm talking, pralapan, I'm talking or chattering or addressing or speaking. And I'm vishijan, giving up or defecating or eliminating or discharging, evacuating the bowels, excreting. I'm sure you all wanted to know all those synonyms. Or I'm grinam, I'm accepting, and grasping and laying hold of, taking. Unmisan, I'm opening the eyes, or nimisan, I'm closing the eyes. But in spite of this, so I'm knowing, well, I'm not the doer. This is just the actions of my senses engaged with their sense objects. Now then, this in some ways is a bit of an esoteric concept. Like, what do you mean I'm not the doer? We're all feeling I'm the doer. This whole first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita is about doing things. About me about Arjuna doing things. And will I do it or won't I do it? I don't want to do it. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do one or the other things. Either I'm going to engage in the fighting or I'm going to not fight. And now Krishna is saying, well, you're not the doer at all. And so, of course, this is, basic science of identity, as Prabhupada, our spiritual master, Jagaguru Siddhaswarupananda Paramahansa Srila Prabhupada teaches us, is that we say things like, we don't say me hand, we say my hand. We don't say me leg, we say my leg. Right? We know that we're distinct or different from or separate from our body, our body parts. We say, in fact, we even say my body or my mind. I change my mind. Or I am going to go to such and such a place. But you are not this material body. You are not the material mind. You are spiritual in essence. You are jiva. You are pure spirit soul. You are an eternal living being. This body you have is temporary. Now it's this body that's doing all these things. And you actually have nothing to do with it. And one of the examples that Krishna is giving here is very practical. It's like opening and closing the eyes. In other words, we're blinking all the time. Now, no one here is thinking about, well, it's time for me to blink now. Of course, now I'm speaking about it, I'm suddenly becoming aware of blinking. Right? Or, we're breathing. Sometimes we teach Gauranga breathing, right? So, or pranayama, we start teaching methods of breathing, or, a woman's going to give birth, before she goes through in birthing classes, she learns how to breathe as a method of controlling pain and helping with the delivery, right? It's sort of like, oh, well, now you're going to learn how to breathe, we do Gauranga breathing. Okay, we'll breathe in and hold it and breathe out and be aware of the breath. Right? This is a yoga process. Right? But generally speaking, we're not thinking about it. We're just breathing all day long. We got breathe in and out, in and out, in and out all day long. We're not thinking about it. The only time we might start thinking about it is if it becomes difficult to breathe. As people approach death, all of a sudden they're having to struggle for breath. They can't breathe. Sometimes people have asthma. My wife and one of my sons have or experience asthma from time to time, right? So they're having to struggle for breath. So they're becoming aware, oh, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. This can lead to a panic attack, right? Which makes it even worse. But anyway, the point is, these things are going automatically. They got nothing to do with me. I'm not doing it. My body's doing it. And I'm distinct from my body. I'm not my body. And this applies to everything we're doing with this body and with this mind. It's not me. I'm not the doer. But we all think we're the doer. But ahankara, false ego, this means, what it actually means, ahankara, means I am the doer. It's this sense that I'm the doer. I think I'm doing this stuff. You know, in chapter 3, text 27, and these verses are building on it, you know, Krishna describes, let me just grab it. Krishna says, the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. In other words, so all these things that, like, you know, we get this material body. The material body, you know, according to Ayurveda and just according to Vedic literatures, you know, it's and later on in Bhagavad Gita in chapters 14 and 17, Krishna describes the modes of nature in quite some depth, right? And there's combinations of the modes of nature, and so everybody's body is influenced by and is under a combination of influences from the three different modes of nature, or gunas, qualities, or guna means a rope. So strands of rope, they're like, so the modes of nature are like stranded together, and our material body is under the influence, our mind is under the influence of the particular modes of nature. And we get a lot of this from birth. We can adjust the influence of the modes of nature. This is what Ayurvedic medicine is very much about. It's trying to bring the gunas into harmony. You know, or Krishna describes different actions that a person undertakes in the mode of goodness. That this is beneficial. We're trying to attain to the mode of goodness. This is material mode of goodness because it's beneficial. It's helpful for someone for their spiritual life and spiritual development to be under the influence of the mode of goodness as much as possible. Because under the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance, we become very much engaged in this idea that I am the doer. In the mode of goodness, it's easier to sort of contemplate and meditate upon the fact that, hang on, I'm not the doer, it's just my body that's doing this under the influence of the modes of nature. Now, of course, this is kind of, in many ways, it's kind of quite esoteric. It's kind of like, well, what do you mean I'm not the doer? Whole Bhagavad Gita is about doing things, and you know, and I'm doing things, you know. So this actually leads into in the next section of chapter 5. Arjuna's kind of having this question. He's a bit confused, and sometimes we might be a bit confused. Well, you know, what does this mean? You know, so in verses coming up, Krishna then describes more about who the doer is. So, of course, ultimately, of course, we are a doer. You know, Krishna describes in chapter 18, text 14, the 5 causes of action. And he says one of them, you know, is the person, right? The doer. Then he describes, well, there's the senses, and there's the place of action, which is the body, and ultimately there's the daivam, the influence of the Paramatma, or of the demigods, or providence, or destiny, all different meanings, related meanings of the word daivam. But anyway, so here Krishna is describing that we are distinct from the body. And so we can contemplate and understand that I'm not this body, that this body is just, it's completely temporary. It's false in the sense that it's temporary, and the body is acting under the influence of the modes of nature. And I don't create this body, I get given this body. You know, my parents, I mean, they in some sense create it, but it's not like our mother is thinking, oh, I'm creating this baby and I'm going to make it like this way. You know, it just all happens. under material nature's arrangement. So we are not the doers. And this is what Krishna is describing here to Arjuna. Instead, our body and our senses are just interacting with the sense objects. And so there's various other points that can be made in this regard. Of course, so a devotee is appreciating, well, I'm not the body, right? So I guess sort of the next point to really sort of discuss is, well, okay, who is the actor? Like if I'm pure spirit soul and I'm in this body, well, heck, why am I in this body, and why am I feeling like I'm the doer? Right? It's because of our becoming under the influence of ignorance, Maya, and under the influence of the modes of nature, and my sense of ahankara, that I am the doer. I'm identifying with this body, and I'm identifying with my mind, and so I get caught up in what it's doing, right? My mind and body are acting, and I'm feeling it's me, and I'm completely caught up in it. And I read an interesting commentary where someone described it as vicarious liability. This is like a legal term, where it's kind of like you become responsible for something, but you weren't really making it happen, but somehow you're responsible. This kind of it's more sort of like, in a sense, an insurance term. You get insurance to protect yourself from vicarious liability, where something bad happens that you didn't really cause, right? But you're being held responsible for it. So similarly, in a way, it's sort of like, well, we, you, me, we're kind of like vicariously responsible for what our mind and our body is doing, right? And we're experiencing the reactions, right? We have our free will. This is it all comes down. Everything comes back to that we have our God-given, Krishna-given free will. And we have the choices on how, to love Krishna or to try and enjoy separately from Krishna. Then, having made that choice, and we can say, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember making that choice. But we're making that choice right now. At every moment of every day, we're making our choices to be an enjoyer separate from the Supreme Lord. And so as we engage in activities in pursuit of this idea of enjoying separate from the Supreme Lord, then we are creating our situation. We're creating our future. We're creating our current situation. In the past, we've created what's led up to our current situation. In the current situation, we're creating our future. And so this is karma. So we're creating our situation. We are responsible. And this comes from our sense of identification with the body and mind, that I am the doer. So Krishna discusses further on this concept of who is the doer to sort of answer Arjuna's kind of confusion. So we'll be discussing this in future weeks. Arjuna's confusion on, well, who is the doer then? So anyway, thank you very much. I hope I didn't rave on too much. Next week we'll move on to text 10. Text 10 is a really wonderful verse with a wonderful analogy of how one who's engaged in karma yoga, offering everything to the Supreme, to Krishna, is untouched by sinful reaction, just as a lotus is untouched by water. So the lotus flower, even though it's surrounded by water, is untouched by the water. So we'll discuss that verse next week. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Namaste, Krishna.